Workstation. Let's talk a little bit about that. When you get your workstation, it's usually, okay, this is your spot. Figure it out. Make it comfortable. Make it towards you. So with that said, we got to talk about usage, equipment, comfort, and housekeeping. Okay. Usage. Those things that you use most often need to be in close reach. So depending if you're right-handed or left-handed, and I'm right-hand dominant, so I want my telephone on my left side, okay? Because if it's on my right side, I'm going to cradle the phone between my ear and my neck and type on the keyboard or write my notes or do whatever I'm doing while I'm on the phone. So 45 minutes later, after I get off the phone call or whatever, I wonder why I've got that nice crick in my neck. It's because I've cradled my phone. The worst invention, and you guys have seen them out there, it's they're cradlers that stick on the back of the handset. They've got the shoulder ones, and then they've got those big, they're like clunky, they're like foamy stuff that you attach right to the headset or the handset. Those things are terrible, you know? So all those things that were used most commonly, keep in your reach. Dominant, right hand, dominant, you want it on the right hand side so you don't cradle the phone. Or, I mean, your non-dominant side so you don't cradle the phone. Scissors, calculators, reference books, all that stuff needs to be in close reach. You don't want to be reaching for it or struggling to get that piece of information or twisting your body around to get it. And then that's where we talk about the comfort and the equipment, because none of us have enough space on our desk. So we move our computer equipment around. We're going to see some guilty parties in a minute. Our computer screen is to the right in the corner, and our keyboard is in front of us, and we're looking to the right the whole time we type. And then at the end of the day, we wonder why our shoulders hurt, our neck hurts, we have a headache, all that kind of good stuff. Comfort, same type of thing. You just got to make sure everything's reasonably comfortable. If your seat's too short, you need to raise your seat up. You might need a footstool. If you don't have a footstool under there, you might need to use a box or something like that so you can get a footstool. Now we come to housekeeping. And I'm not going to call any names, and I'm not going to say anything, but I want you to think about your own desk and how much wonderful treasures you have under your desk, and you only have a spot big enough for both of your feet to fit, but you can't move or stretch your feet around, okay? We're going to see some guilty parties in just a second. All right, this is a pretty good example of a workstation. The only downside to it is the mouse and the keyboard are not on the same level, and we'll talk about that when we talk about best practices. So this is pretty good. This individual doesn't have too much stuff under the desk, so desktop's not too cluttered. Their telephone's on their non-dominant side. Stuff is within easy reach. Would you like to work in this office? Maybe it is your office. Okay? Computer is behind the person. Their main work desk is in front. The computer monitor is to the left. There's stuff everywhere. There's clutter everywhere. Slip, trip, and fall hazards. Remember, we're talking about hazard identification. There's all kinds of stuff going on here. The other thing about this picture that I love is we always sometimes have people who say, this building's making me sick. The air quality is terrible in here. I'm getting sick. I can smell the mold. I can smell whatever. House plants, like you see in this picture, are notorious for this. Because what happens is people bring in their plants, they never repot their plants, and they just keep adding water to the soil, so mold spores start to build up. And when you go to water your plant, guess what happens to all those mold spores? They get into the air and they aerosolize. So lots of times I tell people, before we spend a bunch of money on indoor air quality testing that's expensive, $10,000, $15,000 a pop, let's get all the house plants out of the area. Let's get all that potpourri. Hopefully nobody's burning candles. You know, if there's Glade plug-ins, that kind of stuff. Get all that nice, smelly stuff out of there, because sometimes it's just overload if people have allergies. But houseplants are notorious for that. We probably have workstations like this where they found you a spot or found somebody a spot that was really not an office space, so they just kind of cram you in a little teeny cubby. This cubby, the person even can barely fit in it when they go to sit down. And you can see their computers kind of crammed in the corner by their file cabinet. They got stuff all around them. And they're going to be typing in an awkward, at an angle position because the way everything is positioned there. This space just is not good enough. And then besides that, the work surface itself isn't more than 18 inches. So we've got issues that way. So you just got to think about that, look at that. If you can at least control some of that or make recommendations to prevent that, that would help your coworkers go a long way. Because there's nothing like being miserable all day at work because you're uncomfortable, you're, you know, and then to go home and just be miserable because you're uncomfortable all day. All right, we're going to talk about computers and best practices. All right, we're going to talk about your monitor, your keyboard, and your mouse. And if you look in this little picture here, you can see the keyboard is on the work surface itself. It's an older computer, which some of us have still. And it's at the bend of a cube, so it's in an awkward position. There's a bunch of stuff on the desk that this person has to work around and with, and then they're just kind of crammed up. So your monitor should be directly in front of you. So when you sit down at a desk, your monitor should be directly in front of you, about 18 to 20 inches away. Now, with that said, there are some employees that have larger monitor screens. So if the bigger your monitor is, you may have to push it back a little bit further. That's gonna be, you know, that's just gonna be a judgment based if you have 22-inch monitor. There's some that have really big ones. Those of us that are more mature in our work experience and require bifocals and trifocals, we have to adjust our monitor a little bit differently, okay? Ideally, the top of your monitor should be right about eye level. But if you're more mature and you need those assistive devices, then you may have to raise or lower your monitor to be able to look through your glasses without cricking your head up or down. Because think about, the big thing you got to think about is your neck is like a piece of celery, and your head is a bowling ball, okay? That's the weight of your brain, and, well, most of our brains. Some people we question, but that's the weight of our brain. And we're on this celery stick. And if you're constantly in the up position or down position, eventually that celery is going to break. I have to be politically correct. There's HR people in here. I can't say other words. So that's why we use mature. So as your head moves, we just got to think about that. Up and down, okay? Think about overhead lighting and glare. Your monitor, your computer screen needs to be at a 90-degree angle to any outside light. So if you have a nice corner window office because you're important, then your monitor needs to be 90 degrees to that, or you're going to get glare and have problems, okay? Your keyboard and your mouse should be on the same level, and we encourage the use of keyboard trays and mouse trays that are all connected. What we don't want to see, like we did in this picture, we have the keyboard down at the waist level, which you want your arms and your elbow to be in a 90 degrees. That's what we call a neutral position. We don't want to be reaching up onto the mouse because now we have a reaching injury. So we've got that constant motion of up and down, up and down, up and down, and eventually it's going to wear and tear on your shoulder. Okay? And it takes a while if you're not used to working with a keyboard tray and mouse. It takes a while to get used to that. You might be uncomfortable for the first couple weeks you use it until your body readjusts because we have a lot of muscle memory from where we were working, and now we have to get down at waist level. The other thing with some of the keyboard trays and mice is it's got to be fully articulating or fully adjustable. That means it pulls out as well as up and down, and the actual board that the keyboard goes on tilts up and down. Okay, so that's what we call articulating. It's got to be adjustable in a variety of different ways. Yeah.
So if you don't have a tray, I guess you would need to raise your chair up, but then you have to do something under your feet?
Correct. Potentially, yes.
Okay.
And you've got to watch, too, for if you go home at the end of the day, if you don't have a keyboard, mouse, and tray, and you're using your keyboard on top of your workstation with your mouse, can you put me on?
Oh, yes.
That's fine. Okay, so if you're working on top, and say I'm working like this, and you go home at the end of the day, and you've got those crease marks in your arm from your desk, you're actually doing nerve and tendon damage because it's constant pressure for whatever length of time you're doing, your data entry. So there is that potential that, you could be causing some soft tissue damage in there. So you really want to be at a 90-degree angle so that you're typing like this and using your mouse and not doing one of these things. If you don't have a keyboard tray and mouse, you've got to get up high enough to your work surface. But then the other side of that, too, is once you get your chair up, you've got to be able to fit under your desk. And I mean, I'm not being funny. Everybody's got different style desks, but then sometimes your legs hit the top of the desk, or the arms of your chairs impact that. Or, your chair doesn't stay up, it rides down towards the end of the day. We have those problems. So all those things kind of play factors. And that's why I said if you really think you need ergonomic assessments requests, we can come out, we can kind of help you get through some of that. So that was a good question, though. Okay. All right. So here's some examples of what I'm talking about. Does it have a laser on it?
It does, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if the people at home
No,
probably
they
can't
won't
see
be
it.
able to
Okay. Or at home. At home.
Well, that's okay.
They're at home. The picture in the upper right-hand corner is this individual has one of those really small cube areas. They only have about 18, that desktop is only about 18 to 24 inches. So their computer screen is literally sideways, and when they sit to type, they are sitting sideways parallel to their work desk. And then they're turning and typing to the side. So they've got all this twisting motion, all this kind of stuff going on. On the bottom right-hand corner, you can see she's using a keyboard tray, but she's reaching up to use her mouse. And we find that a lot. That's not an uncommon practice because lots of the older keyboard trays don't have mouse attachments. You can buy just the mouse attachment, but before you spend that money, make sure your keyboard trays are articulating and they can be adjusted.